So in commending this publication to the waiting world, I must also say there's no need for me to outline the contents for you. This is done very succinctly on the back of the book, and Peter Price, the editor, has amplified on that in just 5.5 pages of his introduction. So what I propose to do then is to say a few words about a couple of important issues that seem to me to emerge from the various articles in this collection. The first has to do with the economic reality with which we have increasingly to cope in a globalised world. This is the practical, as it were, as opposed to the theoretical focus of the first two articles in the collection, both of them being rather larger than the others. Together they take up almost half the total contents. So I ask a question arising out of those two articles. Is the global economy of the modern world an idolatrous pursuit of wealth for its own sake, as Stephen Ames suggests, in the light of his theology, which puts persons in relation at the centre of the universe? Or is it rather that this economy, this global economy, is a matter more to be contested between neoliberal and neoconservative forces on the one hand, and those calling for better moral foundations for economic theory and practice on the other, as Bruce Duncan suggests in the second article in the collection, with reference both to economic theories and to recent papal teaching. In a review of a recent biography of the former British Home Secretary and Chancellor of Oxford University, Roy Jenkins, that I came across in the London Review of Books earlier this month, I found evidence for both views. Stefan Collini, the author of the review, refers, among other things, to the increasing political difficulty, as he puts it, of introducing measures aimed at producing a less unjust society. This, he says, has been compounded by the fact that from the 1950s onwards, a constantly rising level of consumption was an established expectation, and competition between the political parties became increasingly focused on ways of meeting it. This almost exactly matches what Stephen describes as an idolatrous distortion of humanity, which interprets the restlessness of the human spirit, and I quote, as a finite need that can be met by the consumption of material goods, making it possible to turn people into consumers who literally can never have enough without really knowing why. On the other hand, the reviewer, towards the end of his piece, suggests that there may yet be a future for a progressive political party committed to serious support, and by serious he means not just going hard at it, but seriously taking on board the theories of those who maintain that the economy should not be value-free other than what can be counted in dollars and cents and so forth. A party seriously committed to social justice might have some prospects of success if it recognises that, and I quote again, in a financialised world, one of that's the party's principal tasks has to be to combat the class that collects an economic rent from its control of finance. I think I can leave it to you to work out which class and what kind of political party that might be referring to. At the very end of his review, he says this is all summed up, the kind of politics of a financialised global economy, summed up when a certain Prime Minister of Great Britain said or declared that Britain is open for business. I think another Prime Minister said something similar just recently. So perhaps then, between these two articles, perhaps the jury is out on this issue of what kind of reality the modern economy in its global extent It really is. Although I must say it is hard to discern anything other than an unequal struggle between the negative and positive forces of globalisation and their impact on the kind of community that Rowan Ireland describes in his article. Although he concludes by finding promise in the way what he describes as transnational social movement organisations, in the ways they can assist local communities in exchanges for justice and peace, and goes on to say we might recognise in these momentary signs of the emerging kingdom of God. But this conclusion to his article only comes after he has admitted that the mainly hopeful assessments for the Brazilian favela made in the early years of his study had to give way later on to more sober, though not overwhelmingly pessimistic, accounts of that favela in later years.